Hi, my name is Andrew. You can call me Cookies, and today we'll be taking a quick look at Restoration Druid to see how you can succeed with the class and also improve further after you understand the fundamentals. So starting off, the key stats that we want, just equip item level. Then as you start comparing same item level pieces, try to make sure everything has haste on it. And then after that, the secondaries don't really matter. All right, and then our key talents for Restoration Druid is going to be Convoke the Spirits and Cenarius' Guidance, which is going to make Convoke the Spirits a 1-minute cooldown, and also just allow us to have Convoke the Spirits in the first place, which is a very important cooldown for us. And then the other important talent is going to be Reforestation, which is going to synergize really well with Convoke the Spirits on a 1-minute cooldown, where every third cast of Swiftmend, which we can generally do every single minute, we can proc our Incarnation Tree of Life form and then convoke while in that Incarnation Tree of Life form to give us extra healing on all of our convoke spells and make them super, super, super potent. And then lastly, we just need to talk about our tier set bonus, which honestly, it doesn't affect your gameplay at all. It literally just increases your healing done. So don't worry about it too much. All that's going to really matter is in order to get the most out of the tier set, you just need to be making sure that you're following the important steps of keeping up your upkeep spells and then using your efficient healing spells as much as possible, which we'll talk about in the gameplay section, which is up next. Oh my gosh, this group did no pull timer. Okay, I'm going to talk to you guys about Restoration Druid and Raid and how to succeed with it. So step number 1 is upkeep spells. We want to make sure that we are pressing Life Bloom and Efflorescence and keeping them active in the raid. Next up is making sure that we are pressing Swiftmend and Wild Growth on cooldown together. Swiftmend goes first. That procs our Soul of the Forest, which empowers our next spell that we use, which is going to be Wild Growth. And then now we make sure those upkeep spells are up again. And then after this, we're going to have our third Swiftmend. And what this does is proc our Reforestation, which is our Tree of Life form. So what we're going to do is this is how we would use our cooldowns. And then if we don't have a certain cooldown up that's in the lineup that I'm about to say, you just skip that one. So first off, we trank. I'm tranking first. Then I press Swiftmend to proc myself into Tree of Life. I Wild Growth. I Nature Swiftness. I Convoke. And then I follow up with a Flourish at the end. And that is how you use cooldowns. That's what it's going to look like every other time, because Trank and Flourish we're going to treat as 2-minute cooldowns, basically, if we have the reduced cooldown on Tranquility. Sometimes it'll be 3 minutes, but that's okay. And so now, the next time, what we're going to do is we just Convoke, and we don't have to use... Oh, he's turtling that. Oh, people still followed him. Now again, we're making sure our upkeep spells are down. Pressing Swiftmend Wild Growth. Making sure people aren't dying. And now we press Swiftmend, Wild Growth, Nature Swiftness, Convoke. And that's our 1-minute cooldown. And then now you see that we're about to have Flourish and Tranquility come back up within the next minute, but we're going to save those until we have Convoke back up and we're back in Tree of Life. And that way we can combine all of those cooldowns into one big window and do as much healing as possible in that small space of time. And then the only other thing is the reason we don't cast Trank while we're in Tree of Life, and we cast it before Tree of Life, is because we want to make sure that every Tree of Life is getting Convoke in it, because that's how we get the most amount of healing in like the shortest amount of time. So now I have this third Swiftmend ready, where the next Swiftmend I press is going to put me into Tree of Life, but I want to wait until Convoke is ready, because if we press it now, we're going to get that Tree of Life, and then it's going to be gone by the time Convoke is ready. So instead, I'll just go ahead and drink like a mana pot here or something, just to pass the time. And then I also could like channel Trank or something like that. So now if we want to do healing. Obviously, there's like not really that much healing to do, so I'm going to wait just a little bit longer. Okay, we can probably do it now, even though it'll still be a bit of overkill, but we're going to go ahead and trank. Then we're going to follow up with a Swift Mend, Wild Growth, Nature Swiftness, Convoke, and then finally a Flourish. And then now, what do we do between those cooldown windows, and more importantly, between our Swift Mends where we don't want to press Swift Mend yet, or we're just waiting for it to come back off cooldown so we can Swift Mend Wild Growth? This is where we're pressing things like Rejuvenation. And I'm not really that picky about who I'm putting Rejuvenation on. I'm kind of just blanketing the raid with it, and making sure that I'm not like making myself go off of it. So just use it during that downtime. And then you can also resort to things like regrowth if you feel like people need more single target healing if they're dying, like this tank is very low HP, or like these people with the heal absorbs. And throw a few regrowths into them after I put rejuvenation on them. And then we're making sure we keep those upkeep spells up. And then now we're about to have Convoke, so I'm going to Flourish, or sorry, I'm going to Swift Mend. And then I should have pressed Wild Growth, I forgot there. Instead, we just pressed Nature Swiftness, Convoke. Lost us a little bit of healing, but that's okay. As long as we get the idea. Run to this far one. No, it looks like we got it. Okay. Making sure I cover all of them. Swift Mend Wild Growth. Now the boss is about to die. I don't think he's going to live long enough for us to get Convoke up again. So I'll probably just end up using this Flourish right now. So I'm just going to Swift Mend Wild Growth and then Flourish into it just to help keep the raid a little bit more healthy. And then that's pretty much it. Oh no, we got an intermission? Are you kidding me? So I could have saved it. That's okay. We'll just have to do it without that. And we'll be as the tank. Can kind of put this wherever, because the fight is over after this, so it doesn't matter if there's pools everywhere. Okay, so I mostly need mana right now, but I'm going to go ahead and trank, and then I should have enough mana to just Swift Mend Wild Growth, and then do my Convoke combo. So we trank, Swift Mend, Wild Growth, Nature Swiftness, Convoke. Also, sometimes you might be noticing over here on my cast sequence that I'm pressing Nature Swiftness before Wild Growth, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter if you press it before or after, because it remains and it doesn't get consumed by Wild Growth. So that's the only reason why sometimes I press it before. Because it does not have any effects, so it doesn't matter. Press another Swift Mend. Not going to really have enough mana for Wild Growth. We can sit here for a second. Honestly, at this point, I should just be doing damage, really. Should just be spamming Wraths. Just Ironbark that guy, since I can't really help him out. And then we'll wait for this last Swift Mend, so that we can use it with all of our cooldowns if people stay alive. So right about... Gotta wait just a little bit longer, please. Swift Mend... Nature Swiftness, Convoke, and then finally we end on a Flourish. And that's Resto Druid. So obviously we ran out of mana pretty fast. The way you manage your mana is you just don't have to, use all of these abilities non-stop. And you can allow for some downtime in between your cooldowns and stuff like that to like line up better with, certain phases in a boss or something like that. But in general, that's how you maximize your HPS on Resto Druid. Those are the things you need to worry about. Don't worry about anything else. Those are the top priority of making sure that you're getting right. So, okay, so we did a raid, and now we want to take it a step further and improve a little bit more, and see how we actually did looking back, because it's easier to improve after analyzing something rather than trying to do it in the moment and you aren't sure if you were or weren't doing everything correctly. So the first thing that we're going to do is open up the log, and then we are just going to find the buffs tab up here at the top. So go to buffs. Then after it loads, we're going to change all sources here at the top left. We're going to change that to whatever our name is or the Resto Druid that we're looking at. So we click on the Resto Druid. Then what we can do from here is we are just going to find Life Bloom and Efflorescence, which there's two ways of doing this. You can either scroll down and just find them individually, like so. So here we have like, it's going to be basically Spring Blossoms is going to be one of them that you could use, though it's not the exact same. And then what we can do is also instead, to find them a little bit easier, you can click on all abilities right here at the top and just find Life Bloom. So there's Life Bloom. That was our uptime on Life Bloom, and you can see what targets it was on, all of that kind of stuff, how many times it was cast. And what you can see here is these big gaps that happen. These smaller gaps are totally fine. This is okay if this happens. Ideally, it's like this right here, where it's just a big block and there's no fall off at all. But it's not going to be perfect. But what you want to look out for is these really big gaps, like right here, 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which I remember specifically when it was happening. We did not press Life Bloom once, which is very problematic. This is an entire minute without Life Bloom, which is one of our most efficient like single target heals on, you know, a target like a tank who's taking damage the entire time. So it's a lot of extra healing that we get to do if we're upkeeping that. So definitely need to improve on that, and we can see where we made a mistake. So it was towards the beginning of the fight, it was easy, but then as the fight started ramping up in difficulty, we fell off a lot more. So I maybe need to set some kind of alert or something to obviously notify me, hey, you need to put Life Bloom on a little more frequently. And then the next thing we can look at is Efflorescence, which I believe is like a totem or something like that. So it's going to be a little weird to find on here. One kind of like lazy way you can look it up is by just looking at Spring Blossoms. And as long as there's Spring Blossoms constantly on the raid, which is the buff that people get from Efflorescence, then you can kind of assume that Efflorescence was down. And then whenever there's these gaps, that means you didn't have Efflorescence down. Though this isn't super specific, because even when Efflorescence falls off, like right here, Efflorescence probably fell off during this time frame, but these people just had the buff still on them, the Spring Blossoms buff. So one way you can look at it. Another way is I think you have to find like the totem ID or something like that. I think it would be under probably cast, and then you can click on yourself, and then you would see Efflorescence. And what we would do is, yeah, I can't. There's like no way for me to find it. There's a way to set up like the totems. I don't exactly remember how to see the duration on the totems, but I would say the best way to do it at the moment is to do the Spring Blossoms, or you can also use WoW Analyzer. So I can go to wowanalyzer.com. We can just take the link of our log and throw it in here. Go to the kill, click on ourselves, and then this should spit out the information that we're looking for upkeep spells. So it will say Efflorescence. Here we go. It was active 67% of the time. So same thing, you can see the big gaps there, and that will let us know. The WoW Analyzer is very good at just telling you like your upkeep and sustain spells and if you're using them correctly and stuff like that. So WoW Analyzer for that stuff, but otherwise, the next thing that we're going to check out is going to be really good for logs, which is going to be looking at our actual cooldowns and making sure that we were lining them up properly and using them at effective times. So the first thing you can do is you're going to go to cast, you're going to go to yourself or the druid that you're looking at, and then we're going to find the different cooldowns that we use. So that is going to be Tranquility, Nature Swiftness, Convoke the Spirits, and Flourish. So there we go. There's all our cooldowns. And if we want to actually make this look a little bit nicer, what we can actually do is I would say put, if you're running 2-minute Trank specifically, put Trank and then Flourish, because then they'll line up together so you can see if you're using them at the same time, like as 2-minute cooldowns. And then what we can do is put in Convoke and Nature Swiftness. That way those are also lined up. So then we go Convoke, and we're just pressing this little plus button on the side to put those in. And there we go. So now we have Tranquility at the top. This is every time we cast Tranquility. Then we have Flourish every time we cast Flourish. And then we have Convoke and Nature Swiftness. Cool. So then from here, we also need to know, are we using these during our tree of life windows. So we're going to go to buffs. We can keep ourselves selected. And then we're going to go down here until we find, I believe it is called Incarnation. So you can just click on that. And then there you go. You can see that. You can also click the plus button just like we did before, just like this, and it will just add it to the timeline. Doesn't really matter either way. Just gives you two different ways to look at it. So for now, we will do this. And now we can go ahead and look at this. So now we just scroll up so that we see everything nicely. And then we go, okay, so we had the first Tranquility. Then we pressed Convoke the Spirits with a Nature Swiftness tied to it. We went into our Incarnation window. And then we followed up with Flourish. Next one should just be Convoke the Spirits with a Nature Swiftness in our Incarnation window. Awesome. Next should be all three. Awesome. Next should be just the two. And then this is where we messed up. That's where in the VOD I was talking through it and I mentioned that I messed up. So I was just going to press Flourish, I believe, because I thought the fight was ending. And then so on and so forth. So the main thing you're looking for is every Convoke the Spirits happening with a Nature Swiftness? And are they happening in an Incarnation window? And then are we, using Tranquility right before the Incarnation window? And are we following up the Convokes with Flourish every 2 minutes? So it should just basically look like all cooldowns, just Convoke and Nature Swiftness. All cooldowns, just Convoke and Nature Swiftness. All cooldowns, just Convoke and Nature Swiftness. And that is pretty much it.